Welcome to the Tuck Shop. My name is David Savage. I'm the founder and editor of Tech Talks and a director at Harvey Nash. And today I'm joined by regular co-host and panelist Jack Pierce, who is incredibly jet lagged, having just come back from San Francisco, which I'm sure he'll remind us of several times during the show.
Yeah.
But also Daisy, the editor and founder of Startups Mag, and Nadar from Patchwork Health. Now, before we get into today's tech news, Anas, as you're on the end, would you like to select something from the Tuck Shop? I mean, this is beautifully arranged for an NHS doctor, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say there's no healthy options.
Well, that's fine.
Eat healthy.
There's fried eggs in there.
Joking. Yeah, you get some eggs.
Fried eggs aren't healthy?
Protein.
Okay.
But as a Canadian also, I saw Twizzlers. And that's something I don't see often in UK supermarkets. So I'm going to opt for the North American snack today as North American.
Fair enough.
Twizzlers it is for me.
You hand them over.
They are from San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Number two.
Yeah, okay.
Number two.
So we should keep a
You
chart.
get 5 mentions.
Five,
Two,
that's
two down. You got
Jeez.
3 more.
Daisy.
Takes you back. I'm going to go for Love Hearts, I think.
I like the product placement, by the way,
Shameless.
just in case anyone's not familiar with Startups Mag whilst you're getting Love Hearts.
Subscribe.
Yeah. Right, Jack. Your Twizzlers have gone, I'm afraid.
Yeah. No. That's fine. I've obliterated loads of love hearts already, so I'm gonna go for some love hearts today.
Fair enough. I will steal a curly whirly, but not eat it on air.
Don't eat it.
I'll save that for later. Right, tech news. So, first article, this is taken from The Guardian. Ex-Google worker fears killer robots will cause mass atrocities. A little bit kind of Terminator, Skynet-esque. We've just discovered that Daisy hasn't seen Terminator, so that might be lost on you.
Sorry.
I mean, that is a fairly sacrilege. Anyway, so ex-Google worker Nolan, who joined the campaign to stop killer robots, has briefed the UN diplomats in New York and Geneva over the dangers posed by autonomous weapons, saying the likelihood of a disaster is in proportion to how many of these machines will be in a particular area at once. So atrocities and unlawful killings, even under laws of warfare, especially if hundreds or thousands of these machines are deployed. Sounds like a terrifying case of computer said yes.
So I just worry about biasing. If these are being developed in America, the rest of the world will be blown up like that. The amount of bias they probably bake into it. It's just, it's very, very scary. And you do have to think about things like that, like if you've got one engineer working on it who's like, hates Kim Jong-un, who knows what's going to happen, Dave? I'm scared. Skynet is online.
And that's that?
Yeah.
Okay, right. What do you think?
So,
Sensationalised? Yes?
Oh, I don't think it is, though.
No?
I mean, of course it is. It's trying to be sensationalized, but I think it's warning us about a real danger. This is not theoretical anymore. And AI is moving really fast in every other domain, and I think most domains we interact with it every day, so we kind of predict what's happening. From my point of view in healthcare, I can see where it's going. I can see the pros and cons. But at no point have we seen AI in, for example, medicine that eliminates the need for a human to control the AI. So AI is augmenting human decision. I think in this article, the issue has been highlighted is the lack of accountability, that humans are not controlling the AI. And without going into kind of too much about the history of accountability in war crimes and atrocities, the most recent cases, whether it's the Rwandan genocide or the Bosnian war, the Hague or international legal bodies often look at responsibility for people who made decisions, not the people who pulled the trigger, but the people who gave the decision for pulling the trigger. So if we're talking about autonomous AIs that make the decisions themselves and they commit war crimes, then who's accountable?
Yeah.
Is it the engineer who programmed them?
Well, yeah.
Who goes on trial, yeah.
Exactly. So it's a really tricky question, even from a legal point of view.
Well, in the article, the whistleblower, Laura, the software engineer, says that she would be part of the kill chain. So she's saying that even having developed it, she felt that she would be held accountable.
Yeah, how could she, there is a morality thing there. If you're an engineer who's gotten into tech and then you pivot into making these kind of arms, then the blood is a little bit on your hands. I mean, it's not quite Lady Macbeth forcing Macbeth to kill everybody, but it's on that chain, like you say. So yeah, it's.
I suppose it's kind of like a slightly exaggerated, obviously, version. But if you buy off-the-shelf products that are supposed to protect your business and then they don't, whose fault is that? Is it the business's fault who's bought the product, or is it the people who develop the product? And I suppose to your point about bias, if you've got, I don't know, some rogue nation that gets hold of this technology and develops it, who knows what that machine is going to have in its parameters.
And that's definitely going to happen, because you can just imagine with all of the drone tech that's come out and then weapons fire drones down, that if these get deployed, then as soon as they're shot down in whatever country that they were deployed in, you just know that that person can then take that tech, then it will be replicated, and it would just be never ending, and it will just keep scaling.
Kind of like Avengers and Spider-Man, where
That's exactly what I thought.
they leave all the...
You've seen that, but you haven't seen Terminator.
I know.
Oh.
It's fine.
Anyway.
So at the end of the first Avengers, they all get the lowly people get their hands on this alien technology, and then Vulture in Spider-Man is using that technology to augment his army. It's real.
Yeah. So what's the answer? Is it to say, regulation, or is it to just say, no, this is a bad idea, and we should not have autonomous robot? Drones operated by humans, yes. Actually, this is not good application of tech.
Let's try and one positive spin from it is I can only hope that this means a lot less, frontline bloodshed for whoever is using the technology. So you can assume that they wouldn't send all of their best 17 to 25-year-old people to war anymore. They might send an army of robots.
If the collateral damage is high, then...
Well, this is the thing. I'm struggling to find
positivity. Or could it end up being robots versus robots? I build my best robots.
I'd watch
you build
that.
the best robots, let them fight each other.
Yeah.
So as in, because you're talking about the makers of the drones, if they're on the good side,
Would
very
Craig
hypothetical.
Charles be commentating? Or?
That would be great.
But absolutely, I think so. Going back to the question, what my view on it, I mean, I'm a pacifist in many ways, with the exception of the highly defensive situations only. Ideally, no. So weapons of mass destruction, like any weapons of mass destruction, no nukes, no chemical weapons, no drones, no AI. But if countries choose to go down that line anyways, strong accountability and strong involvement of humans in final decisions. So use advanced machinery if you have to. That's not personal opinion, but going down that route, do that, but build accountability into it.
Do you think... Sorry, go on, Daisy.
So what do you think the thought process will be as well? If you're deploying tech, yes, there's a high monetary value to it, but that's the risk, is that you lose monetary value once you deploy it if it were to get shot down. But when you're deploying troops or actual people, I think there's a lot more thought that would go into it. You sit down and deliberate a lot more than you would by just sending out tech.
Very true.
Right. I think we should skip and move on, because we could probably debate this for the entire show. But let's get on to something a little bit more light-hearted. So we're talking about Venn. This is a this is an article from TechCrunch rather. And Venn are a company hoping to build MTV for the gaming generation. I will say this right now, I do not get esports.
I see that. Look, this is just you.
Of course you do. But
Well,
hang on. Anas, do you get esports?
Nope.
No. Daisy?
No.
No. There we go.
But it's not about us getting it. This is geared at Gen Z.
But hold a second. When we were the MTV generation, the first MTV generation, I bet our parents and grandparents said, I don't get it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's not be one of those people that say, I don't get it, kids. Let's try and understand it. Now,
We're turning into boomers, guys.
I know, right? We're becoming boomers now. Now, my co-founder actually happened to be someone who's really into esports, and he tells me all about it. I think it's a fascinating industry that's growing.
Oh, no, absolutely. Of course.
And I can see why Venn is coming to the scene, because it's a hugely fragmented industry that doesn't have that one MTV yet, or doesn't have that one social media, traditional or not.
Just to jump in, the article points out that 200 million people currently consume most of the content on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's mostly on YouTube.
And
but
you've seen the rise in Twitch as well. You talk about some of these gamers called, like, I think Ninja's one of his names, hanging out with Drake, earning millions and millions of dollars every year. The rise is there, and it's already happened.
But getting back to your point, is part of its strength that it is quite fragmented, and that allows for creativity.
Oh, that's the kind of if you speak to the grassroots, what I hear from a lot of them is, let us keep it grassroots, and not in a way regulated the way MTV was, or controlled by a single publisher. And I think an aggregator is great, because for noobs in this industry who want to go like, where do I want to watch the next esports championship? Then I know where to go, rather than having to search through different social media accounts. But so long that is not taking away the autonomy of small publishers and podcasters themselves.
I think it's the same as any influencer content, in the fact that it's all monetized, and it's, we've just seen all the hashtag sponsored trend coming up, where people are sort of really having to be open about what they're being paid to promote. So I think it falls definitely within that same category, and it's probably there's so much more content because people know that they can do something they love whilst earning money.
I mean, part of me, and this might sound really arcane, picking up on what you say, is we know that people are consuming this content in vast numbers. We know that there's huge amounts of money involved. We know that there are big corporations like the I don't know, likes of Real Madrid who are paying for esports teams. If you go and play other games like, I don't know, snooker or darts, you do so in an environment where you're not having advertisers and brand messages shoved down your throat.
Yes, you are.
Not in quite
You're
the same
playing
way.
snooker in the pub.
You could buy
Foster's written on it.
you could have a pool table at home. But there is that thing that I don't know. It
But let's go
feels-
mainstream sports. I mean, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's American football,
any
it's
spectator sport.
any spectator
Like
sport.
horse racing.
What? You're just annoyed at this because you don't like playing video games. That's it. What's the last
No, I do,
video
I
game you
do.
played?
I
What's the
just-
I'll be honest, don't say Rain Man or whatever it was. What's the last video game you played?
Pez.
What issue of Pez?
I have a PlayStation 2 at home.
Right. There you go. This
PlayStation
isn't a
2.
format
Yes.
for you. Don't worry about it.
I've never even heard of Pez.
Pro Evolution Soccer is
Oh, it's
the
that.
worst version of FIFA. I mean, historically it was actually better, but anyway.
Because FIFA's good.
Yeah.
I mean, look, let's face it.
Sorry.
It makes perfect sense, as you
Like
said.
true girlfriend, that is, I think, yeah,
It makes sense that Ven are looking to build this for the simple fact that there are hundreds of millions of people, it's big money, and no one really owns that space, right?
Yeah.
Well, Switch came out, and Switch has grown massively since, I don't want to get the date wrong, but I think it was a while. They've been around for a while. And then as soon as they came out, obviously YouTube launched YouTube Live. So there are lots of different platforms still. So I don't think that there'll be one that necessarily monopolises the market, but maybe that's why it's growing so much.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, you used to think how you used to access MTV, and I remember the article mentions, is it TMF? No. One of those weird, TRL. And like that is how you'd get your source of new music, and that was great. And this is how you're going to get your source of, gamer influencers and things like that. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'll be sending them my job application soon.
Do you think e-gaming should be called a sport?
No. But for the
Good
same
question,
reason
though.
that darts and snooker are not sports.
Darts, a fit man's sport, as it's known in my house.
Is chess considered to be a sport? Professional chess.
It's a game.
Sport
I-
of the-
I-
We're going to upset a lot of
Sport of the
people.
mind, sport of the brain. Yeah, but it's a game, you're right. But I mean,
Although you said before we went on air that people do physically train
yeah.
to keep fit.
So
Although
again,
not that a
as-
17-year-old
as-
shouldn't be fit, but there
Right,
we go.
but as I have been educated by some of my colleagues and friends, they do actually have to remain physically fit because you sit in for hours and you want to maintain, controlling your nervousness and your heart rate to be cardiovascular fit means you won't get that nervous on the game. So apparently there's a certain level of fitness.
Last word on it. You're an NHS doctor.
Yeah.
Would you prescribe someone to...
No.
No, there we go. Right.
There's
I'll
no-
do-
There you go. Screw then.
Right. I've got professional opinion here. Right. So, next article. This is taken from The Verge.
Yes.
Uber ride check detects vehicle crashes by the smartphone of the driver's GPS.
Yeah.
Initially, I read this and I misread it, and I thought, oh, hang on a minute, they're tracking people's movements in Uber. That's a bad thing, isn't it? I mean, this is a good feature that could be subverted, but no, it's only tracking the driver's GPS, and it's basically to alert emergency services to accidents if all of a sudden the car suddenly stops and so forth. This surely sounds like a good idea.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I struggle to see any flaws in it.
For a company like Uber that has had some bad press,
Yeah.
I can see this working really well, tying into emergency services. And again, you're a doctor.
I mean, it's
the
fantastic.
time that an ambulance takes to get to a scene.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to these kind of marketplace products, Uber, Deliveroo, and others. That often we think of them as connecting supply and demand, which is great. But they're in a great position to go beyond that, to bring more value to the consumer than just connecting supply and demand. Their business model is about supply and demand, but for us, anything around safety is always welcomed. And I think the other point what I found really interesting from this article, it's a reminder that hardware has always been years ahead of software. And software is catching up right now. So the technology they're using right now, like accelerometer and any other kind of movement-based technology in the hardware in our phones, we've had it for over 5 years now. But it's hardly been used by most apps. So it's just showing a good example of technology catching up, harnessing the most, or software harnessing the most of the hardware we have to actually deliver high value features.
Just on that, I don't know if we were talking about this a while ago, but a guy is, when you connect your phone to the Wi-Fi on the tube, a guy is developing to take that data, everyone's data from their phones, not to do anything nefarious or nasty with it, but to literally help TfL better plan their tubes. You know, if you've got a tube running all day and you're getting 15 people on at every stop, it's probably a success for like a really busy area. Whereas if one person gets on every 3 stops, you don't need it. So, we say this all the time, we're all for sharing our data if it's for good. Like we'd share it with the NHS and all that kind of jazz. And Uber going down this way reminds me of what TfL are looking to do.
Well, we've had Waze on the podcast,
Yeah.
and you know there are commercial reasons why they're collecting that data, absolutely. But at the same time, they do share a lot of the data that they have with TfL from a town planning point of view. And I could imagine that this kind of data would be incredibly useful to go, you know what, this particular stretch of road is actually more dangerous than we had imagined. Let's have a look at what we could do to reduce the capacity for accidents.
Or put a speed bump there. Yeah.
Or imagine if you start capturing all these sudden breaks. Not accidents, so pre-accidents. So right now we say, we have like 20 people who had to slam their brakes in this intersection. Is there a blind spot somewhere there? Even before that. So that gets really interesting when you get to use the data to avoid accidents, not just predict where they come.
See, the thing that I thought from this article was, yes, it's great that Uber are doing this, but why isn't the automotive market doing this? Surely that should be built into the car. And yes, not everyone can afford to buy a new car that's got all of this high-tech stuff within it, but isn't that where we should be headed, rather than relying on your phone, which you don't even want people to be looking at whilst they're driving?
Which you probably are. I think most of the much newer, smarter cars coming out of the major car makers.
I think Tesla are looking to finally put out a 40k car as well, which is still quite expensive if you ask me. But I think the desire is to move to cheaper electric and tech-like cars, but it's still a way off being cheap, I think.
It's
you're right.
an argument for the strength of partnerships and a tech ecosystem that is actually joined up and well thought out, and not just that, but for local authorities to be less fragmented.
Yes.
TfL works because it has jurisdiction over buses, trams, roads, everything. You look at somewhere like Manchester, like Transport for Manchester, it's the buses and the trams, but not the rail, not the, so we need to also have a think about how local government's structured, right, to make sure that tech can work in partnership with government.
Exactly, and that works, I mean, from a startup perspective, shameless promotion, there's a lot of opportunity for startups to work with public services as well. There's accelerators popping up like Huckletree's Public Hall.
Yep.
So there's loads of different ways. The main barrier so far that we found has been the different language between startups and public services, and it's just about bringing them both together, setting out what their expectations are, and then having some sort of medium in between, whether that is an accelerator, so that startups with all these great ideas, like Uber with this idea to help with car safety, they can actually work with public services better.
Ooh, on that note, actually, can I plug one of these accelerators that we have been through last year? It's called public.io.
Yeah.
Its entire focus is on startup GovTech. So startups work in public sector. Healthcare is one of them, but they do any types of GovTech.
We know the listeners of the podcast will know them well. We've had them on the show a couple of times.
Yeah, of course you did.
Johnny?
Yeah.
And Ed. Right.
Yeah.
Right, last article. This is all about a backlash against technology. Yes, I know you're jet lagged. It's the last article. Don't worry.
Trying to cut it to 4. I can't.
Where have you just come back from?
San Francisco. By the way, me mentioning San Francisco nowhere near as many times as Anas mentioned being a doctor, so...
I didn't, he did!
Yeah, all right.
In fairness, that's more impressive.
Is it?
Yes, anyway. So, this is interesting because it's talking about the fact that technology is this potentially privacy-destroying, oh dear, product placement fail, hang on. There's privacy-destroying gadgets, voice-controlled speakers, surveillance camera doorbells. We've talked about killer robots at the top of the programme. There does seem to be definitely a media narrative which is quite negative about technology, but it also points out that, of course, cultural attitudes are saying, well, people are buying these products. They're in everyone's homes. I have plenty of the tech that we should be worried about, and I use Amazon all the time and whatever else. And if you're trying to evaluate whether cultural attitudes towards technology have changed, whether there's a backlash or not, this strikes me as the wrong place to put the goalposts. You're nodding along.
Yeah, straight away, I just, looking at like techlash, I just think as a consumer, and I think a lot of people probably think this, we're just numb to it, that people are going to steal your data, but we want this smart camera, we want the smart doorbell, and we've kind of weighted the value of our privacy against the new tech and gone, well, I'm not that interesting, they're not going to target me. And that's how I kind of, as a consumer, would see it. So
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, how many times have I told you the story about the episode of South Park where do you know the one I'm going to talk about, where users blindly sign and agree to Apple's terms and conditions, and then they end up being made into a human centipede, like because they're not reading. And it's like what you're saying. We give away our privacy to have ease of access, to use tech every day, every minute, and I think until we rewire our brains to protect ourselves more, we're going to do that. I log in to everything with Facebook. That makes me a scumbag because I shouldn't be sharing all that information with those horrible people, but I'm also lazy.
I actually think that there is a tech backlash, but I don't think it's the kind of backlash where people are abandoning tech. I think consumers are voting with their feet to a certain extent, and I think the tech market is responding to that. Whether it's responding fast enough or enough is a different question here. But I think the article points out the fact that quite a lot of changes happened in Facebook recently as a result of Cambridge Analytica. So yes, there's a tech backlash, but not in the sense of we're abandoning, but more of in the sense that I think consumers are telling these companies, get better with your privacy, approach to privacy, approach to data, get more ethical in your approach. And some of these companies have started responding. Yes. Of course, there's more to be done in that space. So I think, the fear of tech backlash, the way I guess, horse carriages were probably talking about cars when they first came in, we're probably in the same situation. Tech is here to stay, it's not going to go away, but it might be shaped better with consumers worrying about their privacy.
I mean, there's a sentence in here that kind of riffing on that theme that I'd love your opinion on. The sentence is, technology companies indeed remain big, successful and admired. I imagine that no one would dispute the big and successful, but do you think they are still admired?
No, I don't think so, they are. And it does refer to statistics that dropped from, an American poll that said, is tech companies, are they good? And it used to be 71%, and it's dropped to about 50%. Wow. So opinions are not great of some of these tech companies, but we still use them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, are they so big that it doesn't really matter if they're admired?
Well, I don't know if you know, but I've just got back from San Francisco, and
did you?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
And now they're pissed off at big tech. Oh, I shouldn't have swore, should I? They're annoyed at big tech at the moment because the disparity in pay for people working in big tech and the incredible amount of homelessness in San Francisco shows the disparity of big tech and the everyday man. People are literally getting forced out of their homes because they're being bought by engineers who's, and as I was talking about before, are being paid an obscene amount of money to do this job. For all big techs in San Francisco, all the best talent in the West Coast market is going to flock to San Francisco, and it's not going to get any better. Enough is enough out there, apparently, according to the few people I spoke to in bars, drunk.
But whilst that might be the narrative, is it having an effect?
Well, if you've seen the sort of the trend of tech for good lately, that seems to be everywhere.
Some hashtag, isn't it?
And yours. So there's, for example, Unbound London. They had a mini pitching event about tech for good for social impact startups. Bethnal Green Ventures is all about funding tech for good startups as well. So I definitely think there is more of a focus on technologically responsible startups and companies. More so on startups at the moment because they've got a chance to really start from the ground up and look at where they're sourcing materials, look at how they're hiring for diverse talent as well. So I think for new startups, it's an exciting time to define what they want their culture and their product to be looking like. But then I've spoken with a few people and said, is it too late for these big tech companies to sort of retrace their steps and try and be a bit more responsible?
I heard Greta Thunberg talking to Congress yesterday, and she was talking about the fact that she felt that it was an education problem and most people needed to be educated about the problem. I know that climate crisis is obviously something quite different, but do you think there's a similar parallel here, that it's just the vast majority of people need better education around what is going on within the industry and some of the other choices that they could make?
Yes.
Well, especially as a consumer, when you look at tech, and a lot, before I got into this industry, tech was this big word that was complicated and a bit scary, and for engineers and not for a consumer. If you go and buy a phone, you want to know how good the camera is, how long the battery life is, does it look amazing? Do you really look at where the materials are sourced from? No. Probably not.
It's the same with clothes, though.
Exactly.
We've bought all of our clothes for years from child labour factories and stuff like that.
Well, until we found out, and then there's a big shift. And a big shift happened since then.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the issue of ethical big tech, and obviously there's many layers to that. There's gentrifying cities like San Francisco. There is how you handle data and privacy. There's avoiding taxes, and then big companies around the world not paying their fair share of taxes by using loopholes, as big tech companies have in the news for. So I think there is obviously a pressure on them all to become more ethical on all these different domains. But I think fundamentally the biggest shift will happen from new tech coming in. As you said, tech for good, new startups coming from day one wearing the ethical hat before it's too late, and to change all of that. The big challenge though for these tech companies to have a real chance at coming in is freedom of moving data. Network effects that come with big social companies are the reason why people haven't left. Until there's a way for me to move all of my data from a big social company to another open source, other social media company with my contacts, with my connections, until then, we're going to have to be reliant on regulation to get these guys to become more ethical rather than market forces getting people to move out.
I think we're running out of time. So
Sorry,
sorry.
one more thing.
Go
The
on.
babysitter committee employed at Facebook isn't going to do enough to stop Facebook being nasty.
Here you go.
So let's finish on 2 viewer questions. Very
Ooh.
quick. And I'm looking for less than 5 words in your answer here. Very, very quick.
Oh, God.
So first of all, this one came in from Hayley Green. Is live facial recognition surveillance a breach of our privacy or essential to support our safety? That could be a yes or no.
It's not essential, but it's useful.
Right.
Oh, come back to me.
It's as much of a breach as CCTVs are.
Right.
And as someone who didn't grow up in London, I was shocked by how many CCTV cameras you have. So I already have no privacy in the cities of London.
It's very true.
That's sounding like it's a breach.
Lesser of 2 evils.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Second question. This came in from Shahad Chowdhury. If you could be any superhero, who would you be? Not really tech, but it's quite fun.
I mean, I've always been, it's easy one for me, Iron Man.
You're Mysterio, though. That is Jake Gyllenhaal. You are literally Mysterio.
I
Right.
like Iron Man because you're
Iron
self-made
Man.
Superman.
Iron Man.
DC Comics Wonder Woman.
Cool.
Ooh.
It's got to be Spider-Man. I love him.
Well, you are kind of small
Which
looking.
one?
Exactly. Tom Holland.
Right.
Nice. What about you?
Oh,
You don't get out of that question.
Aquaman.
What?
Yeah, it'd be quite fun to be able to breathe underwater. I haven't actually seen the film. Quite fun to breathe underwater. Anyway, look, guys, thank you very much for coming on the show. You, of course, get
Thank you.
Tuck Shop T-shirts.
Oh, thank you.
Treasure them.
There you
Lo-
go.
love a
Take
bit of
selfies
merch.
with them.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
We will be back, hopefully, with Disruptive Live, who kindly host us, will have us next month. But until then, thanks for tuning in.